very effectively. This table here has been used again to talk about speech privacy potential, and looking at how, with background noise levels rising and the attenuation that you can achieve on the partition, and how you will achieve levels of sound absorption which are acceptable depending on the two things together. It's an important lesson, this, about zoning the space and looking at background noise in relation to the performance of the partitioning in order to achieve a degree of privacy on site. I hope all of this is making sense to you, and there is a chance for you to ask questions during this seminar to Robert, and Robert will relay those to me at the end. So what I want to do now is just talk about some of the materials that are being used and how these materials are being applied within the built environment. This was a concept which was developed for Pizza Express along with Ab Rogers Design, and here they use what happens with reflection with hard surfaces and what happens with soft surfaces to create an area where you can have private conversations and external noise being bounced away from the space. And this is actually being rolled out now into the high street, and this is an image of the first one, and I think we'll start to see more and more of those rolling through. One of the big complaints in office is I can't have a private conversation, or I can't go somewhere and actually, do that concentrated work that I need to be able to do without being disturbed. And here's a couple of examples of how designers are taking that and providing spaces within the workplace to do that in forms of booths of one sort or another. This one here is a very cost-effective, transportable little booth. And you can see a lot of surface area, soft spaces. You sit in there, make your phone call or do your study without being disturbed. The centre one here is an accountancy practice in Cardiff, where they've designed what they wanted to do, and then it was bespoke made actually on site. And then finally here, this is a product called Parks by Bene, where you've got high levels and places to go in and have nice informal conversations without being disturbed and with a degree of privacy in an open plan space. But again, it's that background noise level that really makes a difference on privacy in those areas. I started my sales career in freestanding screens, and they've come on a long way from when they started. And you're now able to create offices, meeting rooms around the perimeter of a large open plan space and still achieve privacy. And again, it relies on the fact that you've got background noise and you've got an absorbent ceiling, which will cut down the sound coming from one space to another. And these this type of product here are also available now with lids. I've seen some clacking examples of products that you can then move around, but they've got their own independent lid which reduces sound transference. This next product here I saw in France about 2 years ago, and it just struck me as that there almost becomes little works of art. Very soft, absorbent material in a range of different sizes and shapes that just absorb sound. So here you've got a space, quite hard surfaces around, noise from children in the space, and this will help reduce that sound bouncing around. Very effective. What's happening now in offices is that there's a whole environmental side to the build as well. And one of the things that they're doing is using thermal mass to keep the building cool. And they're doing it by using exposed soffits. The exposed soffits are great, but we're now introducing a reverberant space again that's going to make the space bounce around, the noise is going to bounce around. So couple of solutions here using soft, highly absorbent tiles, some as freestanding units supported independently and some supported in a subgrid. They're very effective as well because the sound will hit the hard surface and come down behind it as well. So you can get twice the level of absorption than you would sometimes get from just going from the underside. So very high levels of, so you don't need to cover the whole of the ceiling with that. And designers now are starting to experiment with some of these different shapes and get some fabulous different effects within the space itself. You can see some examples here with some of these rafts and islands now actually going in curved shapes as well, and round discs through here. And even baffles. So each one of these baffles obviously has a large surface area, but it also helps break up the sound. So high screens between the two, and then these baffles running between the departments. This is an auditoria, and here you've got some hard surfaces which are acting to diffuse the sound and spread it throughout the auditoria. This is an absorbent product. So we said that ceilings are the largest area. It's also possible to introduce sound absorption on the walls. And these are different to putting a ceiling against a wall, because a ceiling does rely on having an air gap between it and the slab. These are designed to be fitted against the wall and achieve high levels of absorbency. That's actually a windmill, if you were wondering what it was. So it's a graphic printed onto the wall. So they're becoming pieces of art now as well. Sorry, there we go. Just a little bit slow. This is a new product. We saw it first at a Surface Design show, and it's being produced in Scotland. And what's particularly interesting about this product is they're made up of a series of tiles, and in front of the tile is a series of different profiles. And the profiles can be mixed and matched with different colors. So although it's this shape today, that could be a completely different pattern tomorrow. So it offers that degree of flexibility from a visual point of view, but still getting absorption, especially behind a reception desk like that. And here's a couple of other examples of felted products and press felted products that come in a series of tiles. And I've seen these used in projects, and they really can break up a wall, both visually, but they just add that extra piece of sound performance. And this is one I particularly liked, really, because it's just such a beautiful piece of art in its own right, and that's using cut and folded pieces of felt. So let's have a look, just before we sum up now in the last 5 minutes, at some case studies, really what can happen. This type of glass pod was very popular a few years ago. We're still seeing examples of it. But what happens within a space like this is you've got hard reflective glass in a curve, and actually what you're doing is you're creating a focal point. It's a little bit like being in St. Paul's. And if you're in the middle of a room like this, you will quite often hear the sound coming back at you. It can be disturbing. And what they've done in this example is that they've increased the level of absorption both on the ceiling and on the floor. One of the other things to do in here would be to add a drape or something soft, or one of those blocks that I showed you a little bit earlier. Interestingly enough, we've then got this glass sliding door. Now that door will have a gap all the way around it, and that can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, depending on the level of background noise. It will cut down, it will reduce the amount of sound coming out, but it will also allow a certain amount of sound coming in, again from a masking point of view for privacy. And this is a good case study that features again within our guide to Office Acoustics. And this is a project recently completed for Ordnance Survey. An acoustician was brought on board as part of the design team. He did the work, main contractor was appointed, and then went away. And part of this included a brick wall which went all the way around the building to cut down the noise of the traffic from outside. And it cut through part of this building as well. As part of the value engineering, the brick became hard plastered block. The acoustician came back and realized that this was going to affect hugely the reverberation within that space, and they had to add additional absorption, which they've done here on the walls with perforated boards and through here. This section through here leads into the open plan spaces, and that actually diffuses some of the sound going into the space as well. But it's a really good example where an acoustician was brought on board but wasn't left on board for the whole of the project.